All right, folks, welcome back. Dave and we are back after our bye week last week. We hope you didn't miss us too much, but we are inside Nova here talking high school football. Dave, hello, sir.
See you, Trevor.
All right, good to see you. Well, let's jump in here. We will start off talking about Manassas Park, and honestly, I think we probably both agree. Just a little bit of an unfortunate circumstance and scenario there. They had to cancel a game last week against Liberty, I believe. Was it Liberty?
Yes.
And Dave, kind of tell us why that is and how things are unfolding there with Manassas Park.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's one of these situations where this is kind of a recurring struggle up there, with trying to not only uh, find enough players to compete, but also then trying to keep those players healthy. And, they've just had a numbers issue there for a number of years. They had to cancel the 2022 season because they just didn't have any players. In 2018, they had to cancel the varsity season. So again, this is kind of a recurring thing. And so what happened 2 weeks ago, they were playing up at Handley. At halftime, they were down 42-0, just decided to call it.
Yeah.
And then last week they uh, just made the decision to forfeit their game against Liberty. And it's just they just didn't have enough kids. Obviously safety and keeping those kids protected is the primary goal, and they just weren't going to risk that. And so they just didn't have enough kids to field a team to be able to play the game. And so this is going to be they've got two more games left. And it's kind of a week by week thing with
Yeah.
them and whether or not they're going to be able to, how they're going to be able to finish out the year.
And right, as of this moment, Monday evening, we still don't know whether or not
It's definitely a
they will play their
possibility. Yeah.
game. Yeah, so um, you I for me, I see that headline, I read the story, and you just kind of you feel bad for the players that want to be out there. It's
Sure.
for some folks, it's such a big part of high school and high school experience. They want to be part of the football team, but there's a very slim turnout for football, and some of them aren't afforded that opportunity. So you hate to see that
Right.
for the kids, I think.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
all right, I think this week you said you're working on an update with Freedom Woodbridge and kind of talk about their
Sure.
progression and their development. Give us kind of a little taste of that.
So, without having to rehash the
Hmm.
whole history here, I think it's pretty well documented, understanding what happened. They won two state titles, had a 29 game winning streak. Their head coach, Daryl Overton, after the 2023 season, leaves for Hayfield. And along with that, the majority of the potential returners that were supposed to come back left. Some went to Hayfield, some went
Yeah.
to other schools. But regardless, Freedom basically was gutted. I mean, they had to basically had a whole new coaching staff. They essentially had a whole new team. They had very few players who had any varsity experience, let alone football experience. And so, the result was predictable last season. I mean,
Right.
they went 0-6, did not against Cardinal District opponents, didn't score any points. Kind of this season, they're expected to kind of be in the same boat, and so far that's been the case. They're 0-9. They finish up this Thursday. Um, hosting Hilton. They scored 20 points. And for many schools, I think programs. Well, gosh, only 20 points. But in Freedom's case, schools go through rebuilding years. Okay, programs. Hey, they might be have a senior heavy class. We graduate. We start. We just kind of have a down year and we go back up. But in Freedom's case, this was like I won't say unprecedented. I'd be hard pressed to find a high school program that went from the top. I mean, 14 and
Exactly what I
0
was
to
thinking.
0-6 in one season. I
The
maybe it's
highest of the
happened,
highs. I mean, they were
right? And maybe
top of
it's
the
happened. I'm
class.
talking not just in Prince William. I'm talking
Yep, yep,
anywhere.
yep.
It's really just and it was very sad to see. And I think amidst all of this, what kind of bothered me was, all the focus was a lot on Hayfield and Daryl Overton and the controversies going up there. But I think Freedom really got overlooked. I think they got kind of forgotten about, and what. kind of the what happened there and what they and people who really in a lot of cases didn't have anything to do with this. Now we're left with the task, the
Picking up
tall
the
task
pieces. Yeah.
of cleaning up this wreckage. And honestly, I think they would say in retrospect, the program really should have been probably playing at a JV level last year. They just were not ready, prepared to do varsity. They played 6 games, they honored contract, but they just had no business. And this year season, they're kind of in the same boat. That being said, so they still see progress. Now it depends on how you measure that. Now, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not wins and losses, but it's little things. Hey, we got more kids coming out. You would score 20 points. We didn't, we were only down by 14 at halftime twice, these types of things. Well, not 14. They were either losing by 14 or less at halftime twice this season. So that's kind of the metrics they're having to use because they just, even this year, they've got, I think 70% of their roster, again, is either first year football players or kids that, have played but didn't have RC experience. So it's just, they're in an unsustainable, untenable position down there to
Yeah.
probably continue on the path that they're on. So what they're going to start looking at and really seriously discussing is maybe for the 2026 season start thinking, do we go do an independent schedule where we can basically go up against more evenly
Yeah.
opponents that are more in our that we can match up with better, or possibly just play a JV schedule. But I think it's pretty clear all they've got to, and they know this is they know they're going to look
Exactly
at this.
right. It's not like we're trying to kind of layer on their shortcomings.
It's
We're just
just
assessing the situation as it's
it's
unfolded.
just realistic, and it's
Mhm.
unfortunate. What happened there. I think certainly could have been avoided in a lot of ways because I think there's other things that just weren't probably addressed even before that that kind of led up to all this. But again, that being said, you have to deal with what you deal with. The new head coach Paul Ranga, who took over for Daryl Overton, this is his second year, has kind of has been really emphatic about just distancing the program from the past. Because really, when you say rebuilding, it's almost that's kind of a I mean, they are, but it's really, in my opinion, almost a do-over because they're really, really having to start from scratch. And
Yeah.
so, with that's going to take for their short-term viability and their long-term viability, they're going to have to look at how to make that feasible, while also again keeping players safe. But you got to these kids are their confidence and their self, all those things beyond just you know experience and talent and skills and teaching the game, it's a hard thing to go through that every single week. And to their credit, kids have stuck it out.
Yeah. Could build
Um,
some resilience.
but it's and there's a lot of life lessons there.
Yeah.
And I commend Freedom for I just think they really got forgotten in all this and what happened to them and how they just really what they had to endure out of really and some really no fault of their own. So anyway, that's a
Yeah.
long way of saying,
For
that's kind of what I wanted to kind of write about this week because there is progress and there are things going on, but there's also trying to then balance that with the present reality of we're just it's really hard to be.
And you certainly don't want the players. You don't want if they're so overmatched out, and
Yeah,
you don't want
I
injuries
mean
coming
they
into the
are making some
equation.
inroads, but they play in the state's highest, largest
Yeah.
classification, and it's just it's a tough situation. And again, they know that and they're going to start looking at that, but it'll be something that it's probably going to what's necessitated
For
that.
for the story, did you chat with the coach a bit? I'm just kind of curious of okay, and he
I mean, he's very
paints the
emphatic. I
picture
think
of
he
how he
said at
sees
the
it.
Yeah, oh, he's very yes, and
Mhm.
I mean, he understood when he walked in. Hey, look, I'm not. The players who have left, they're not coming back. Um, they're just not. So I have to work with what I have. Knew that possibly team opponents who had been on the flip side of being beaten
Yeah,
by Freedom in years
stomped by
past.
him
There might be
before.
payback.
Hmm.
And dealing with different things. Whether he had anything to do with it didn't matter.
Right.
This is the task. This is the job. So yeah, I think ideally he would have preferred. He said they'd done a JV schedule last year if that had been he possible and again do JV 2 years at JV and then work your way up to varsity. So again, you just kind of ease in rather than just throwing
Yeah.
everyone in. But that didn't happen. So after this season, now that definitely he's already presented a plan, written something up that says and not only what we should do, but also why. And I think the administration, again,
Yeah.
they understand that, and there's not,
Kind of
something will be done.
reassess.
Yeah,
Colgan was a squad I think we hit on maybe for at least the first 3 weeks or three of the
right,
first 4 weeks. They got off to a really fast start. They've faded a bit, and now maybe they haven't necessarily faded, but just kind of come up against stronger opponents. They have Forest Park this week, so kind of just give your analysis of how why now we've seen a couple losses for them after what'd they start 4-0, 5-4-0,
correct.
um,
And
and then what we can expect from this week's game between them and Forest Park, which is has serious playoff implications.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just exactly what you just said. They ended up, facing some tougher opponents. I mean, their schedule, their open, first four games were against, some struggling programs right now.
Mhm.
Colgan's essentially a young team. They didn't return a lot of starters from last season, so they had some key kids at skill positions, but they're still relatively young. So I think, the combination of the two. Um, when you go up against a Garfield, certainly against Woodbridge this past Friday when they lost 48-10, Woodbridge they're loaded. I mean, they are loaded at every spot. They're experienced. They got talent, and so I think that's when it's sort of you see, hey, there is maybe a little right now anyway, a little bit disparity between where Colgan is
Hmm.
and where some of these other teams are, just primarily based on I think who they opened up with and overall who they've with the youth and the experience that they have. So, um, along those lines, now they still are in contention. They
Right.
still are in a playoff spot. They right now are, I believe, at number 8 in the
Number 8. Yep. I was
in
just
the
looking
Class
at it.
Six Region B. There's 2 weeks left this Friday, and then the following Friday, the top 8 teams, based on seeding, get in. So and I think Forest Park is number 9 or I believe they're number 9. So the winner of this game, because this is where things are going to get, jockeying for position, and these
Yeah.
every little
Two
win
two
counts.
weeks.
So
Yep.
Colgan wins this game, and I think it's going to be a pretty evenly matched game. I think that could really go either way. Colgan comes away with this, you know, they're going to be 7-2, and they've really now put themselves, I think, in a pretty good spot. They lose, they could maybe still sneak in if other things work in their favor, but it's going to be, maybe a little bit harder to squeeze in. But
Mhm.
there's a lot, yeah, there's a lot
It's
riding on
It
this.
is exciting, kind of coming down to the wire, at all levels when you get toward the close of the season and some of these matchups. Yeah, the playoff or not, well, I guess it is the playoff rankings, but the power rankings has Colgan at 8, Forest Park at 10, but less than about
Right.
point five points um separating the two. So we have Colonial Forge up top, kind of going to the top of the list. Colonial Forge up top, Battlefield 2, North Stafford 3, Woodbridge 4, Patriot 5, and I know Patriots come on strong.
Yes.
Garfield 6, Independence 7, Colgan 8, Brook Point 9, and then as we mentioned, Forest Park 10. But a lot of bunched up there at 8, 9, 10. Man, 8, 9, 10 are all at 26 point
Right.
something.
Right.
So that's exciting. Does Patriot are they're still working with that freshman QB,
They
or
are.
correct me if I'm wrong. So
They are.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they had a tough. Their first 2 games were against really good teams, and
Hmm.
since then they've won 6 straight. But they're a well coached team. I'm not. I mean, I'm not surprised. I think
Yeah.
they're where they're at and what they're doing right now. They obviously beat Battlefield, and that's really helped them in the points. So they're my guess is those top 5 spots, certainly the top 4 are set. It's just a question now of who's going to finish number 1, 1 through 4. I
Gotcha.
think Patriots certainly, they should be fine. But then after that there's still a lot of potential movement. And it's possible Patriot could even go up, if Woodbridge loses,
Hmm.
and so there's still some jockeying even going on there. But I think those first five teams are pretty well set. It's just a
Since
question of
you
where they'll fall out.
kind of gave him a nice shout out, who is the Patriot coach?
His name is Sean Finnerty,
Sean Finnery.
and he actually he was at Liberty Bealton
Hmm.
prior to Patriot, took over, and he's really, really good. He knows what he's doing. He gets those kids prepared and scheming all these different things. So they're always there. I think they've made the playoffs. I'm trying to remember either 10 straight seasons, not all under him, but he's
Right.
continued that. And they made it to the region final last year. I mean, they're where they're where they're supposed to be,
Right.
and they're a threat. I mean,
Clearly,
they just
ending
are.
Battlefield. Clearly, they're a
Yeah,
threat,
so
right?
they can, they're always right there, and so they're in a good spot.
All right. Well, wonderful, Dave. We are down to crunch time. I
Yeah,
know you're getting revved up for the playoffs as I am. Been great. Thank you for keeping me and keeping us posted, and kind of knowing what the top line stories to watch out for. So, thank you for that. Look forward to reading the Freedom Woodbridge piece this week. And with that, I think we will let you go, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. InsideNoVa.com, Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter, X, whatever it is now. Give us a like, give us a follow, and keep up with our sports coverage and, of course, all of our other news from around Northern Virginia, which there is never a dull day. So thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you.